Hello there and welcome back to another review. So I thought while we're on the subject of Mr. Vampire, I thought I'd have a look at the last movie from this Hopping Mad box set, and that is Vampire versus Vampire. Go and pick this up. I know I keep saying it, but please go and pick this box set up because it's absolutely amazing. So much entertainment to be had. And today we're going to be looking at the last movie, the final movie in this box set, and that is Vampire versus Vampire. Now, what is interesting with this film is that Lam Ching-ying stepped into the director's chair with this one and also decided to reunite himself with Siu-ho from the first movie. So the film, you could argue, is sort of like a reunion of sorts. The fact, Siu-ho is back from the first movie. We've got Lam Ching-ying back. He had an absence in Mr. Vampire 4. He's decided to direct this one as well, so it's sort of like a reunion of sorts. And you could, in a way, you could argue it's a film made for the fans. If you recall, like I mentioned in Mr. Vampire 4 review, it's not that the films have become boring at this point, definitely not, but in terms of box office and how successful they were, it was slowly dwindling. They weren't necessarily as popular as they once were. Not terrible movies by any means, but unfortunately ticket sales and box office returns were not as high as they once were. So, no Ricky Lau in the director's chair this time. Lam decided to take the helm, and I always thought in a way this was a film, like I mentioned, for the fans. It's almost like Lam's like, I'm going to give the fans another sort of Mr. Vampire movie. I'm going to direct it. It's the role that I'm most well known for. It's the role that fans love me in. I'm going to direct it. I'm going to do it for the fans. Now, as we know, there was a lot of Mr. Vampire knockoffs and clones. There was new Mr. Vampire. We even had Magic Cop, which I will be reviewing soon, which has Lam complete with sort of a monobrow taking on a demon in modern day setting. And the film we are looking at today, despite its title, is sometimes referred to as Mr. Vampire 5, hence the reason why it's packaged with this box set, although technically it isn't, but it's still counted as one, much the same way. You could argue Never Say Never Again, like the Bond movie, is not really officially a Bond movie, but people say it is a Bond movie. It's a bit like with this one. It's not necessarily technically part of the Mr. Vampire series, but in some territories, some places, it is known as Mr. Vampire 5. So that's, like I say, what is bundled in with this box set. And what is even more interesting with this film, and the way like Lam tries to give the viewers, especially in Hong Kong, something that, like with all of them, especially in Hong Kong, something they'd never seen before. And what sets this film apart? Like, they all try to do something different. All the Mr. Vampires try to do something different. Like I say, Mr. Vampire 2 was modern day setting. Mr. Vampire 3 had Richard Noon involved in that. Like I say, each one didn't ever just play it safe completely. And in this film, is very much the same. He tries to give the viewers, like I say, especially Hong Kong audiences, something they had never seen before in this movie. And in that, what I mean is with this, we have a Western vampire, complete with cape and the works, and plays in a way and you could argue more of a tribute to the Hammer horror movies of old, as well as sort of homage as well to the Mr. Vampire film series. Of course, we've had like East meets West in terms of horror and vampire movies, like Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires, which I reviewed previously. Now, there was a movie after this. There was another movie after this called Mr. Vampire 1992 that reunited the cast of the first movie. And it's a shame, even though that film, one could argue, it's not the best from the series. It would have been cool if they'd have bundled it in here with the box set. It would have been nice to have Mr. Vampire 92 included here. And that's just me being greedy, though. They could have really probably kept going with this. They probably could have at least put in another 3 or 4 movies, because there's a lot, like I say, there's a lot of Mr. Vampire clones and sort of knockoffs and things like that. But there was Mr. Vampire 1992 that did reunite the cast from the original movie, but it's not necessarily the best of the Mr. Vampires. But I say it would have been cool if it's been included. But then you can't have everything. But I say just me being my greedy self. But let's get into Mr. Vampire. Let's get into Vampire versus Vampire today. And I can't stress enough, you really do need to pick it up. You just need to pick up this box set. I keep saying it, but as I say, if you're a Hong Kong movie fan, comedy fan, horror fan, please go and pick it up. Each film has its moments and are all entertaining in their own right. Of course, many could argue the original is still the best of all of them. But they're just all of these movies I will continue to watch again and again and again, because I absolutely love them. First of all, I love the way the title screen comes up at the start of the movie with the sound effects like it's being painted on. It starts with Siu-ho as Ho and his buddy Fong trying to protect these jars from being hit by moonlight. And of course, like a small monster puppet comes out of one of them. First it gets stamped on, then a match thrown in its mouth, then they have to deal with this little vampire, and it's just so great seeing Siu-ho back in the series here. We had his brother in the previous movie with Chin Kar-lok, but here we have Siu-ho back. We then meet Three-Horn Beetle, who wants Lam's help with Fong and Ho, as one of these trees has turned into a spirit, and naturally the female ghost inside will not come out unless she is seduced by a virgin. That, of course. So after they sort of set a trap, this female ghost appears and starts sort of floating over Shin-Su-ho, and Fong is meant to sort of shine a mirror at her. And in typical Mr. Vampire fashion, all does not go according to plan. That's what you come to expect, though, isn't it? I mean, like I say, it's just so funny. All these subordinates, like I mentioned before, all these students, all these assistants, they're always a bit incompetent. Whatever they're trying to do when they're dealing with the spirit world or any vampire or demon or ghost, whatever it may be, it never really goes according to plan. Regardless of all the preparation, it never seems to go according to plan. But here he's meant to shine a mirror, and the mirror cracks, and it's quite a cool set here when Lam Ching-ying goes in and all these like banana trees are moving. So after taking out this female ghost, the little vampire back at Lam's workshop has sort of like damaged his coin sword, and that's something they sort of kept going, like from Mr. Vampire 2. There's always like a kid involved, or like if you remember, like in Mr. Vampire 3, Richardson, he's got like a Big Po and Little Po who sort of assist him as sort of ghosts, and you've got a little kid in it. There's a little kid as well in Mr. Vampire 4, and there's a little vampire in this one as well. So whilst investigating the water around Feng Shui, Lam notices something is wrong, and of course we have Billy Lau in this movie too, as per usual with the Mr. Vampire movies. And he gets snagged by something from the water, which is like this tree branch containing loads of bats. So the investigation leads to a nearby church to see if they have any bat nests. And after going to the meditation room, they find garlic hanging in the corpse of Father K, he was like a missionary at the church, and there was another priest there. And Lam thinks he was fighting the devil, they was fighting the devil and won. The village has been in I think like he's committed suicide. This priest, as I say, but there's like a missionary where these nuns are, and like sort of Lam goes to investigate. And what is interesting is, though, the movie, like they never introduce or explain any of the Western vampire lore here. They, like I say, it's got a Western vampire in it, but they never bore you or go over sort of the vampire lore, because I think the filmmaker, Lam Ching-ying, just takes it for granted everybody knows about Western vampires. Like nothing needs explaining, like the garlic thing and bats and all this. Like it doesn't explain any of the vampire sort of mythos. And I guess, like I say, they just assume 99% of people will be familiar with the do's and don'ts, concerning a vampire from the Western world. And we as the audience see some bats in the ceiling, but Lam misses them. And it's worth noting when he comes out to meet Shin-Su-ho, Ho's hair is totally different, much shorter, and it's something that I always notice for some reason. Like when in a Hong Kong movie, sometimes characters will have severe haircuts during certain scenes. It happens in Police Story 3. There's a moment in that when Chan's hair is really shorter than what it was, like sort of the scene before. Happens in loads of movies. Philip Koh's in Mercenaries from Hong Kong changes a little bit as well. There's loads of movies where the hair is a bit different, and Shin-Su-ho's hair in this, it does. It changes from scene to scene. Because I know they're doing loads of films at the same time, and some movies are shot out of sync and things like that. But I just notice it sometimes. As I say, his hair much shorter. Just a thing I noticed. So Lam shows the village chief where to dig for newer source of water, and love it too when the nuns from the missionary turn up at Lam's just when he doesn't have any pants on. And it's quite a funny scene with the little vampire bringing him his trousers, and ends with, of course, with them all seeing his privates. And that's what I've said, regarding Lam Ching-ying in these movies. What's so great, as I've mentioned before, with Lam Ching-ying is he plays it relatively straight. He plays it quite straight, like sort of this upright, sort of noble, sort of Taoist priest who deals with like sort of like problems concerning ghosts or whatever and vampires. But he always gets himself like into a little fix, or his students are not up to scratch, and he has to do. But he, like I say, with here when he hasn't got any trousers, really funny. Lam Ching, really, really, really funny guy. I say, make no mistake, Lam was really funny. But I think in real life as well. I think from what I've read, he was a pretty straight character too. Like I don't think he goofed around that much. But in these movies, he has such a flair for comedy. So Fong and Ho get possessed by the female ghost on purpose and have like flashbacks, and Fong is tasked with finding her body. The water digging has started, though some bats actually move the digging location and they accidentally pull up a vampire. And I love that this scene here with the like sort of the clouds gathering over them and the atmospheric heavy bass and the sound effects and the way the rain comes in. You know, it's a bit like, uh-oh, you know, what is happening here? Something's definitely going down. So Fong and Ho go to like a brothel, always have to have a brothel, and to look for the female's corpse, and we actually get close to what I would call a fight sequence here. Again, with the Mr. Vampire movies, you don't get fight sequences really. You get a lot of set pieces, you get a lot of comedy, but you don't really get kung fu fights. You don't. But there's a little one here. Though to be honest, it's nothing overly amazing. It's cut very short, but even still, it's nice to have a little fight in there. So they want to burn this corpse they dug up, and Billy Lau is always up to no good, just up to his usual no good stuff, just being annoying. Wants to get a ruby out of it first, which he switches with a statue. He switches the corpse with his statue, and Lam goes to like look, you know, when it's burning. Not sure a statue would burn that quickly, but anyway, they go to get the ruby out, and you guessed it, the corpse comes alive as it had like a crucifix on its chest after Billy Lau sort of bleeds on it, and lo and behold, now we have a Western vampire and a Mr. Vampire movie, which does give the film a bit of a twist and mixes things up in terms of what you would expect from a Mr. Vampire movie. I think the thing is, like, you know, they had to inject, I think Lam knew he had to put something in there that would differentiate it from what had come before. Like, yeah, we've had monsters, we've had devil ladies, we've had kid vampires, you know, we've had a real mishmash of different things. What can I put in here where it will set it apart from what other audiences have seen before? And I think the idea of having like a Western vampire, I think that's quite a cool idea. I think just on that novelty alone, just on that sort of that notion as a plot device, I think that works. I think that largely does work. So Mother Superior and her sisters find loads of bats at the church, and Siu-ho has all but disappeared at this point in the movie. And before you ask, yes, there are lots of bats on wire shots. I mean, you knew there was going to be bats on wire shots. We knew that was going to happen. So Fong still can't find a corpse for this woman. Lam then sets off this lantern that will lead them to the girl's body. They find the corpse, and for some reason here it goes slow motion when Siu-ho grabs like this like cobra. It's like, you know, when sometimes in movies they'll do a slow motion shot, or a scene was shot in slow motion, or something's happening in slow motion, and you'd watch it and you're like, why is that in slow motion? Like, there's no reason for it to be in slow motion. But anyway, he grabs this cobra. And, you know, no idea how long this girl's been dead, as the body hasn't rotted. And naturally, of course, whilst going about their business, they find the Western vampire too. And I guess the whole idea was to, like I mentioned, do East meets West in a horror comedy mashup. And for the most part, and thanks to Lam Ching-ying's performance, who is largely on the back foot of the lot of the time in the film, it works. And have to laugh how 1 minute Lam is in the corner hiding and the vampire sees him, and the next shot he has this great big massive wooden stake which he then launches. You know, it's just sometimes like, just the Lamb's there, and then suddenly he's got this great big massive stake that just goes flying. Then we have this whole scene on a rope bridge which even gives Temple of Doom a bit of a run for its money. And suddenly the corpse of the woman is like Caucasian as they grab the wrong one. And I love a funny moment too, how Billy Lau's cousin who got like bit, and there's a funny scene where she goes to bite Billy Lau because she's got bit, and she goes to bite him, and she sees like this boil on his neck, and she's like, I'm not biting that. Like, she wants to bite him, wants to get his blood and everything, but even in vampire mode she's still like, no, because she just sees this boil on his neck. She's like, no, I'm not biting that. I ain't biting that. So Lam Ching-ying now gets changed up, like he sort of gets chained up as Billy sort of thought he was assaulting his cousin, and the little vampire busts him out, and the Western vampire returns to the church via the aid of bats. And watch out for Siu-ho at this point when at the church, as his hair is now short again. It sort of stays style. His hair's sort of gone back, but I think no, it goes, I think it's sort of normal length, then it's short, then it goes back to normal length, and I think at this point here it goes short again. And I know it's annoying, but just when people have had severe haircuts in a movie, it just throws the continuity off a little bit for me. I know, as I mentioned, things are shot out of sync, but when somebody has a haircut and then the next scene is like super short, you can't help but notice. Fong is like, let's drive the bats away, and Ho's like, yeah, but they will come back. And to which Fong replies, yeah, well, we'll just come back regularly. Like, it's like, well, they're gonna, the bats will come back. Well, it's like, well, we'll just come back and just expel them regularly. That's his solution. So our evil Western vampire in this looks a bit like Nick Cave. Just reminds me a bit of Nick Cave. Lam tries to blow the vampire up. It's one of them films where the setup is great and the premise is novel one. Just, unfortunately, the execution isn't always perfect. It's not that this film isn't entertaining, because it is, and it's great having Lam Ching-ying back. And like I say, the idea of having a Western vampire is really great. I think that's an awesome idea. But the execution in this it's not flawless. It is a tiny bit of a flawed movie, but the execution isn't entirely perfect. And that's not to say, it's not to take anything away from the movie. It just maybe isn't, what I'm trying to say is maybe it's just isn't as classic as you would maybe expect or want it to be, but you still have a good time when you're watching it, if that makes sense. But say, just lots of funny moments to say. Still a damn good movie. And actually, whilst we're on the subject, what is your favourite Mr. Vampire movie? If you picked up this box set, Hopping Mad, or if you've seen all the Mr. Vampire movies anyway, what is your favourite one of the Mr. Vampires? You probably, if you watch all the reviews, you could probably piece together what mine is. But say, let me know in the comments below, what is your favourite Mr. Vampire movie? But say, still lots to be enjoyed here. There are even some great effects in this movie, like at the end when the vampire's face is melting. And I think, if anything, like I say, the film just lacks. I think it just lacks a tiny bit of focus, this movie. Just a tiny little bit of focus. That's the only thing. I like it, it just jumps around a little bit. Suddenly this is happening, and this is happening, and then this is happening. Quite cool at the end, though, when Lam is taking on the vampire and burning the crap out of it. There is actually some wire work, more wire work in this movie than one would think there is. There's quite a little bit of wire work going on, especially near the end of the movie. As with typical Hong Kong movies, it's one of them films that goes along at lightning pace, and you can't focus on one scene for too long, as before you know it, you're right on to the next one. The film ends it probably has the most bizarre end scene, or the end shot, that you've ever seen in a Mr. Vampire movie. It's probably one of the strangest of all of them, in terms of sort of the final thing you see in any of these movies. It ends with like these shoes coming out of like quicksand, and like some frogs hop out with the symbol for buy sort of illuminated on their chest, and it's just weird. It's just like, why is that the end, like sort of the end shot? But whatever. But if you've never seen them before, please, as I say, go and check out all the Mr. Vampire movies. You will have a great time. Each is brilliant in its own right. Though I think, as I say, if you put me on the spot, 2 is probably my least favourite. I think 1 will always be sort of the standard, like the classic, the classic Mr. Vampire movies. But I think 2 may be my least favourite. 1 and 3 are probably my favourites, I would say. I think 4 does really well, but I think it runs out of steam towards the end. But I think 3, just for the fact you've got Lam there, you've got Richard Un there, and it's quite entertaining throughout. Mr. Vampire 3, there's a lot to be enjoyed there. So for me, it probably will go 1, 3. I think them 2 are top of the movie, closely followed by 4, and then this movie, and then probably 2. As I say, remember to let me know if you've seen all the movies, what is your favourite from the series. But as I say, what a great, just so happy to own all these. I know I keep saying that, but I'm just so happy. I've been waiting for this for so long. Back in the day on VHS, showing how old I am, I had Mr. Vampire and Mr. Vampire 2 from the Made in Hong Kong label, but that's as far as they went. They never unfortunately released any more than that. We haven't had a new updated release of Spooky Encounters 2 as well. That really does need to come out. There's a lot of Samos that still need to come out from Eureka or 88 Films, and that's where it's so exciting, because there's so many more movies, so many more Hong Kong classic from the golden age in the 80s they've got to release, and I'm really looking forward to sort of what they bring out next. But mate, if nothing else, you've got to pick this box set up. You have to pick this box set up and see Lam Ching-ying is absolute best in all these movies. But as I say, really enjoyed all of them, but I think 1 and 3 are probably my favourite. So thank you very much indeed for watching. Hope you enjoyed the review, and I'll see you again soon.
Don't concentrate on the finger, or you will miss all that heavenly glory.